Actually, we're 30 seconds early, so Richard, make some jokes or do your soft shoe or something.
I got nothing to say.
Okay. Well, why don't we get going? Welcome everybody. Oh, Tim is here.
Nice.
Okay.
1 minute, I got 1 minute to go. Please share the meeting, I'll just sit over here.
No, you won't like what I do, so.
I don't mind what you do it.
Okay, I'll do it. Okay.
Listen, you're on there, huh?
Yeah, well, it doesn't matter. This is the Goffstown Capital Improvements Program Committee meeting, the 127th meeting we've had this summer. I exaggerate. And for people who are new watching, the CIP committee recommends a capital improvements program to the select board, the school board, and the budget committee based on the input of the town departments and staffs. As we have emphasized, we're not the budget committee, we're not the voters, we're not making decisions on expenditures. We're looking at capital needs and looking at a way to structure them to even out tax burden and rate them based on their need. And this is maybe the final presentation from the staff, unless we need to have callbacks for the last three departments. So we've decided, flipped a coin, and the library came up head, so if you ladies can come forward. Please introduce yourselves. You can make your presentation, and then we'll see what questions we have. Everybody should have the matrix, which has not been revised, I don't think. So if you take that out and then look under the tab for the library. Which do you have? Do you have your reports or? Okay, so mine's a yellow library tab, but everybody else has a different flavor, I suspect. Did somebody point out where on the matrix we are? Because I haven't.
We're at the bottom of page 4 of the most recent matrix. You're looking at the blue and gray one. That's what I want. Blue and gray, page 4. 6-4.
Not mine.
6-4.
This one.
Okay, yeah.
When did that come out? Last meeting?
6/4/26.
And we got it, and I don't know it. I can just listen along.
Probably in here on the pages, right?
See, this is why we flounder.
I got the old one, page 3. We'll just move on.
Okay, page 4. Am I say it? Okay, thank you.
No problem. I'm Teresa Curtis. I am the chair of the Library Board of Trustees.
And I am Patty Panic. I am your library director.
And we have two items that we are bringing forward with CIP. One of them we are proposing for next year. It is a $30,000 renovation of our HVAC system on the 3rd floor. The HVAC system was put in when the building was renovated in 1997. We're at a point right now where when something goes wrong with the HVAC system, they have to kind of fabricate a part for us as opposed to being able to get a part off the shelf because it is quite old. When that is down, especially since we are used as both a heating and a cooling center for the town, we lose a lot of space for the library when it is out for repair. Thankfully, we haven't had any major repairs this year. Last summer, we went through a few of them. So this is a request of $30,000, and we're hoping to have that work done next year.
Okay, that's going to be funded through tax appropriation.
That's going to be funded through taxpayers.
A question on that, does that go into the town's operating budget, or do you have to do it by separate warrant article when you have an expenditure?
It would be part of the town's budget,
Okay, just
town's
part of the regular
CIP,
budget.
right.
Okay.
We could put it in as a separate, but we're hoping not to.
No. Do you have any questions on that?
The second item is one that actually was on your matrix. We had asked for it last year to be done in 2027. We're now pushing this out to 2029, and that is to have the exterior bricks of the building repointed. It's masonry repair for our historic building. It's a $90,000 expense. It is something that we would like to be able to help find some grant funds to help fund it, and then the historic building portion of it may help us with that, but it is something that we can't ignore that needs to be done. The need to have it done immediately, though, is not critical. It's just something that we've been keeping an eye on.
You commented last year, and you have a note in your summary on there's only one qualified mason.
Yeah.
It's a limited,
It's a limited pool for a number of the things that we need done in the building that impact the historic portion of it. So such as the windows that we're having replaced right now, there's only as many people for doing our flooring, for doing our shelving. Yeah.
okay. Committee, do you have any questions on this? That's out a few years, but
That 90,000 quote is from '24?
Correct.
Okay, so it's probably, yeah.
So it's gonna be short when time to do it.
Pardon?
It'll be short funded by the time you do it.
Correct.
You'll need another appropriation.
We may. And that's
Yep.
where we'll be looking for, trying to augment with getting some grants for historic buildings.
okay, okay. Any other questions from the committee? Yeah.
I know that the public library recently had a capital reserve fund created, and most of the departments that have come before us this summer that have capital reserve funds have like annual asks to have those be put in, and I was noticing that that's not a line on here. I noticed that there was, you know, the 50,000 initial from last year, but I was just curious why you aren't looking to be adding each year to the capital reserve fund.
We will be looking to add to the
Okay.
capital reserve fund. We have not had a vote on it as a board at this point in time. We've had discussions about it. It's just, we're in the process right now of still going through all of our building project needs, trying to rate them for where they need to be done based on how it impacts the use of the building, how it might improve programming, things like that, so that we can come, and our plan is to be able to have that plan for this fall, and then be able to go forward with a warrant article in March.
Thank you.
That's a good question, thank you. The library had major, more extensive renovation proposals at one time. Are those on a hold?
At this point in time, we're looking at trying to make sure we have the building that we are in as taken care of as possible. We're trying to improve areas, so there are things on our building list project to make our bathrooms ADA accessible. That's going to be one of the things looking at using capital reserve fund. Restoring the woodwork, doing the outside work that we've been doing with the windows. There's work that needs to be done with the paint. But we don't have a plan to come to the town anytime very soon for a renovation.
Okay, thank you. And you have our capital, you're raising funds for the windows.
We raised the funds for the windows, correct. That was through an LCHIP grant.
Okay, thank you. Anything else from the committee? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
We appreciate the brevity of your presentation.
Happy to do that.
That's a hint, guys. Who's next? Okay, Joanne, show us, where are we on the matrix for Stuart?
Sorry, I didn't hear you.
This is a late edition that Tim asked me to print out and give to you guys.
Okay, thanks, Ray. Just in place of,
No, it's just adding to, it was at our last sewer commission meeting, and he asked me to just add it in so you guys can see it.
This is new, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Corey.
Can everybody see where we are on the matrix and in your notebook? Okay, as usual, please introduce yourself and then roll for it.
So I'll start with the handout that we just gave you.
Tell us your name.
Corey
Yeah.
White from Sewer Superintendent. So, in discussions and looking at our buildings, we found that this particular building, it's Moose Club Park Pump Station. The building was built in 1997, and it has all the original equipment still in it. And we've had some people look at the building, an electrical engineer, and pretty much everything in the building is about 10 years past its lifespan. And we know with wastewater, or many probably don't know with wastewater, there's no off. You can't turn a valve, so these pump stations have to run 24/7, 365. So we're proposing to upgrade all the electrical equipment in the buildings, the pump controls, and this particular building doesn't have a standby generator, and everything, the pumps and everything run off electric motors. It kind of has an archaic system with an old gas or propane motor that runs one pump in there if something, when the power goes out, but there's no lights, there's nothing. So we're looking to potentially spend about $300,000 to upgrade the building to make sure our services continue working whether the power goes out or not.
But before you scare people with numbers, why don't you explain how the sewer expenses are paid?
So our expenses are paid through our user fees, no tax dollars. So it's run more as a business than
It's an enterprise fund.
an enterprise fund.
Okay. Sorry,
Corey,
clear
could you
that.
explain to the group here about why we decided to insert this because of our delay in our construction projects?
So we have funds that in years past were to be used for replacement projects and
Sewer line replacement.
sewer line replacement projects. So some of these projects have been pushed out in trying to work with Adam DPW, so in a cost sharing, so when we go into a road to replace our infrastructure, they would do it at the same time and we split costs where it comes to paving and other things that go along with it. We've been working in different parts of town and that hasn't actually worked. We have a specific part of town where we need to, the most important infrastructure that we need to replace would be in the flats, which is behind like the Valvoline area, Rochambeau Street, Cross Street. That whole neighborhood is the worst sewer in town. So
Is that because of age or grade? Or-
it's both. So it's called the flats because everything is dead flat out there. And that system in that neighborhood, it was laid really flat back in the 40s when it was installed. And it's all old clay pipe,
Which are how long, Corey?
3-foot sections.
So you know what happens to a joint on a 3-foot pipe when things settle?
It's all, yeah, up and down, back and forth, and we just had an emergency repair out there this year because we had to change 170 feet of it. It was going the wrong direction, so it was backing up into an individual's home, so we had to change a portion of it, so it's definitely, it's not good. It's working, but eventually it needs to get replaced.
So could you explain how the substitution of funds is gonna work? We're not doing the road work this year.
So, we haven't spent all the money that we've actually budgeted for, because these replacement projects are anywhere between 500,000, 750,000, and we haven't been spending that. So we have excess funds that have not been spent in years past, where we can shift in other directions into these pump stations and upgrading them and using the money appropriately that way.
Do you carry a reserve though, so if pipes do some catastrophic event?
Yes, we have cash for emergency purposes.
The sewer department has funds with the trustees of the trust fund. It's our enterprise fund, and they manage the funds for the sewer department.
Okay.
So we're prepared for catastrophic events, but the pump stations are integral, and when they fail, it goes backwards to whoever's house it's coming from and comes up through their sinks and floor drains and everywhere else. So the sewer commission decided to pivot on the idea that we would get these pump stations upgraded sooner than later, and then we can still maintain the sewer lines with vac trucks and sewer line cleaning stuff and keep them working. Ultimately, they need to be replaced, but we can keep them maintained and keep the system working in the short term until we're able to realign with the DPW's road plan and attack the street together, at which time Corey stated we cost share on the paving, which is sometimes a huge amount of money. The sewer department pays for half and the DPW pays for half. So in that case, we're saving the taxpayers money by coordinating with Public Works and doing projects together.
So Corey, looking ahead to your sheet on the cross street sewer replacement, is that staying, you going forward with that as well?
Yes,
Okay,
In-
so you've got a big spend in,
a big spend because we haven't spent.
okay.
And it is a big number because that road, if working together with DPW, if we go in there, we're gonna need to do the entire stretch. It's not gonna be portioned out, like we usually try to portion a street out and only do like 500-700 feet. That road, we'll have to do the whole thing. And for sewer, it's gonna be a little more expensive because unfortunately, the sewer main in that road is 13 feet deep in pure sand. So it's really
Difficult.
It's difficult to do, and it costs a lot more for a contractor to come in to dig that deep and control live sand, as we call it.
Okay.
On top of the fact that all costs have gone up for everybody, and our cost for sewer construction is probably doubled at this time.
So then, not to step on your lines, but as we scroll ahead in the later years, it looks like your annual spend goes back down to what I'll consider more historical
Correct.
levels.
Yeah, when we get back to the side streets, it drops back down to trying to portion it out. And even, we've been looking at, the sewer mains, and like, I'll use Rochambeau Street as an example. The sewer main in Rochambeau Street isn't as deep till you get to the very end. So we throw that back in the matrix because that, if we're not completely aligned with DPW, we may be able to go out there and actually portion that street and not have to redo the entire thing. Move ahead with our replacement projects and still be able to, I guess, service our customers and change our infrastructure.
Okay. I was stealing your lines from you, so I'm sorry. You pick it back up now.
Oh, that's fine. So in 28 to 30, we have the CCTV, which is actual camera work of the sewer lines. We hire a company to come in. They put a camera down a manhole and they actually camera the sewer main to see what the condition is, where everybody's sewer service ties into it, and it actually helps in a couple different ways where we see the condition of the pipe and we can find defects and see what portions of the sewer mains may need to be replaced or are in good shape. And it also allows us to know exactly the locations of every house or every business where they tie in, because we are missing some of that information, and when we get a dig safe, some information you don't have, you can't accurately mark it because you don't know where it is. So the last time the town was cameraed was between the late 80s to mid 90s.
It was a film camera at the time?
Well, it's all on VHS tapes.
Oh.
And I actually, my predecessor, Mike Yurgo, actually has this book. It's about that thick. He called it the Bible. And it has every ounce of, I won't say every ounce because some of it's missing because some of it's newer, but all the sewer main in town was cameraed. But it's all paper logs. So it's pretty interesting when you have this massive book that has all measurements in it and manhole numbers, and you're looking on like the town's GIS on a street with house numbers trying to figure out which measurement goes to which house. And the technology nowadays, you can have a company come in and they send this camera down and they actually can take the information they get from the camera work and actually lay it right on the town's GIS. So everybody has the information. Where there's a lot of portions in town where if you ever look at the GIS and the data layers, if you click on utilities, there's a lot of it where it doesn't show any of the sewer lines, or I should say the house services. All the mains are there, but not the house services.
Okay.
And it's very helpful for us in particular, especially in the middle of the night when you're doing an emergency dig safe.
And then you go out 31, 32, it looks like,
Rochambeau Street
yeah,
in
a good customer.
that discussion.
Okay.
And the only other thing we had was looking forward to our vehicle. In 2030, the second vehicle we have will be 11 years old. It's good to have it in the matrix for when it needs to be replaced. There's no saying it's a be-all, end-all, it needs to be replaced then.
Yeah,
I was told that it's good to have it in the matrix, so it's in there.
it is, okay. Andy, do you have any questions? Corey made a very concise presentation, as he usually does. Seeing none, thank you. Okay, Adam. Joanne, tell us what we should be.
Well, I don't have page numbers, but the line item begins with DPW vehicles starts at 84.
Yeah, they don't have line items, line numbers on this.
And I don't actually have a version with line numbers anyway.
Generally, just for brevity, I've always tried to run this year's requests from our department heads, because the out years are all fluid. I spend a lot of time talking about them unless they felt that it was important to talk about.
Yeah, but it's good to have an overview of what's coming up too. Go ahead, Adam.
Okay.
Introduce yourself and then roll away.
Adam Jacobs, Public Works Director for the town. I will talk about vehicles first. I've got a quick preface, and that is that as submitted here, it's our standard pay-as-you-go cash purchase process that we've used in the past. As recently as Monday night with the select board, after a few meetings worth of discussion, DPW is going to be moving, hopefully, starting next year into more of a financing lease purchase model where we can hopefully accelerate some of the equipment replacements that have been starting to stack up over the last several years.
Is that a catch-up?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. You know, and the long-term goal would be to try to stabilize our annual spend, but also reduce the overall age of all of our equipment and the maintenance burden that we incur as a result.
Richard?
It wouldn't allow us to fall behind to the degree that we have at this point, because the way the rental program works is the company itself chooses when to sell the vehicles, and when they sell the vehicles is when we get a new vehicle. When they get the most money for it is much earlier in the life cycle than we would sell it.
Right, so we've got a few different models that, depending on the type of equipment, going forward, we'll be looking at for solid waste vehicles, as Selectman Manzo mentioned. We're looking at a rental framework, reducing our fleet size from 4 trucks back down to 3. 1 frontline trash, 1 frontline recycling. Those will both be a full year annual rental. And then because they are relatively brand new, we feel comfortable having only a 3rd truck instead of 2 backups. Now we have so many breakdowns that constantly we're into the 3rd truck, if not the 4th. But if we have 2 new trucks on the front line, the hope is with a rental model, they backfill you. If you have a truck go down for any reason, you get a credit for the time it's out of service, but they also send you another truck.
So this is a rental, not a lease purchase.
So for the solid waste vehicles, we're looking at a rental model. For a backup truck, they have an even different program, which is just an hourly. As you need it, you can keep the truck on site, and if you put it into service, they charge you for the hours you use it that month, and that's it. So it would actually work out pretty well, we think, for us for those. For the non-solid waste vehicles, looking at more traditional lease, either 5 to 10 year, depending on the manufacturer. They have different term lengths, of course, but try to spread out that spend a little bit, and hopefully for the first couple of years catch up, replace a few more vehicles than we had planned. So what you see in the CIP for year 1 largely is what's been in there the last few years that have been either deferred through default or changes or whatever has occurred with the budgets. So they still remain our number 1 priority vehicles, but as I mentioned, if the budget passes and we have a little bit of liquidity to work with, we'll be adding hopefully the year 2 and 3 type equipment, front loading that as well. But the biggest ticket items we have are a Freightliner tractor and roll-off trailer. So this is a regular semi tractor trailer type truck with a large oversized roll-off container hauling trailer. We'd like to consolidate that into a single unit, downsize some of our cans to a smaller roll-off containers, which would then allow us to have Class B CDL drivers drive it instead of the current requirement of Class A. We only have a few Class A drivers. That's also a type of truck that is available for rental, so we could get down to a per the hour type rental agreement with that type of equipment rather than outright purchase.
Is that in this year's matrix here?
It is. Freightliner tractor, the 2004 tractor and the 2004 trailer, kind of a combo
So
unit.
where are the ones you're replacing it with? If you're going to take those out of service and go to a single unit, where is that in the matrix?
So for me, I list my outgoing equipment here. So that's what's being replaced. If you go on the far right column, I think on your copy as well, memo, that just to consolidate those two pieces going forward, they'll only occupy 1 line in the matrix after this if they get replaced with a roll-off truck instead of a trailer plus tractor.
Derek did it differently this year, so I don't see that column.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Because we usually see what the request is and the cost for the request.
Gotcha. So the cost is the cost of the rough cost of a purchase of a roll-off truck, $293,550, I think is what you should see there.
Yeah.
So that is the cost for a combination unit. That's why I only have $1 for the trailer, because the 2 would be going away, but just the 1 combo truck will be coming back at that price. But again, we hope to use a rental framework for that, because that truck, the roll-off truck and trailer is not running 40 hours a week.
So what becomes your spare tractor for the solid waste division?
So spare tractor for the solid waste division becomes find either a driver that has a truck to be available, or rent something temporarily. With our solid waste regular long haul type trailers, we just need a 5th wheel, so it's a pretty standard piece to be able to get. Unfortunately, with our roll-off trailer, it's so large that there's really no other trailers available that can carry our large cans. So we're trying to more standardize what we have to better allow those down. We don't have to have such a large fleet to be able to cover all contingencies. We can actually start to downsize and take advantage of those, rental or whatever companies that might be out there. And if we have an emergency, find somebody to either truck and driver or just truck to be able to rent to haul cans.
So where in the matrix are the new containers you need to buy to go with the smaller truck?
Right, so those are most likely, we've got two, the plan A is to look at cutting down our existing cans, but we're not sure if they're gonna be good enough, I guess, to salvage and try to make do with. We're looking at rental agreements with those as well, so pretty much soup to nuts on the solid waste end, try to get more of an operating expense for those.
Question. Two questions. One, for the ASL Peterbilt there, are you looking to do rent short-term to catch up, or is rent your long-term plan?
Yes, so skipping down a couple lines, the curbside truck, the idea there is to go from the 4 trucks we currently have to 3, 2 of which are rental based on basically 40 hours a week. And then the third backup truck is an hourly rental as needed, so unless we use it, we don't get charged, and if we have to put it into service, we get charged for those hours used.
So going forward?
Going
rental,
forward,
period,
straight
close
rental,
quote.
yep,
Okay.
yep.
And then my other question was, for the sake of moving those roll-off boxes, you're going to, I think you got use Billerica for the recycling, right? Where's the MSW go?
Oh, so the roll-off containers for us are demolition materials, metal, and if we have stumps that have to be hauled. For our curbside materials, so the single stream recycling that gets picked up, curbside or dropped off at the transfer station. We have compactors that pack the large silver corrugated sided enclosed trailers. Those are all live floor trailers, so the compactors can load them, and then when you get to the site, they eject through with the hydraulic system. So our solid waste, our trash, goes to Turnkey in Rochester, the landfill, and our recycling newly goes to Waste Management Facility in Billerica. Yep. But the plan is still for us to self-haul and continue that
Yeah,
process.
keep it internal. Yeah.
Yep. Let's see, the other items that are on here, we've got a portable message trailer. We have 2 more to replace that have been deferred a couple years, so we'd like to try to sneak in one of those if we can. We have several equipment and landscaping trailers, so we've got another one of those coming up. Doesn't meet the CIP threshold of 25,000, but it is registered, so we include it on our asset list for vehicles. And then finally, for year 1 anyway, we've got a Ford F-550 dump truck with a sander unit and plow package. So that's also been deferred as well twice. So the hope is we can, at a minimum, get these pieces replaced. But as I mentioned, if we can get into more of a operating expense rental / lease financing, we might even dip into year 2 or 3, which starts to get some of our larger 6-wheel dump trucks, excavator, backhoe, some of the heavier equipment, which is coming up.
Are other towns doing this?
Yes. Yep. When Adam presented it to us, he was able to, you called around to other towns and they had good experiences. And to me, when I first thought about it, I was like, over time, doesn't renting just end up costing as much as just owning, because you're spreading the cost out in such a way that eventually you get to a point where it's all just the same as it would be to buy it in the first year. But actually, because of the fact that it reduces our overall maintenance costs, it doesn't allow us to get behind for so long. We're not having to worry about CDLA drivers, like Adam had mentioned. Those, are paid more than CDLB drivers, to be frank. So there's a cost-saving mechanism there. And the only last piece of skepticism I really have about it is just in the idea of not owning itself. But, flexibility matters more, I would say.
One of the large drivers, not just the time involved with some of these repairs or the downtime, the opportunity cost of having that equipment online, is with the faster turnover, you're keeping more of your equipment under the warranty period. So some of those larger repairs, if they do come up, at least aren't quite those shocking hits to your maintenance budget. Especially with the diesel emissions systems, we've really seen that the last 10 years.
Typically, it's not our role to dictate how the departments of the town decides to raise the funds. They're identifying, that helps in our analysis, but we don't dictate that. We look at the equipment and look at how it may be done, but it's useful to know, have that information. Because it is a big change in how you.
My big concern with changing the model is you are a little bit more at the whim of the annual budget season. So if you jump, you no longer own that equipment. If the town votes, the select board, the budget committee, anybody in that process says we're not going to fund equipment lease payments next year, and that makes it through and passes, suddenly we're forced now with, okay, what does that mean for us operationally in a pretty short window of time? We could almost find out overnight that no solid waste vehicles are funded, So to hedge against that a little bit, the proposal that I made to the select board, and then I think sounds like we'll try to carry into town meeting, is to establish either a special revenue fund or a capital reserve fund to use proceeds from outgoing surplus vehicle sales, capture that, put it back into a fund that can be used to fund at least the first X number of years of rental payments as older equipment comes offline. It will at least help ease the concern of being left high and dry. So each of those two different funds has different pros and cons with who is the agent to expend versus how it gets in. But
There are a number of communities that have to fund this through pay-as-you-throw, trash tax, fee, whatever you want to call it.
Yep.
And that's, I think you got pushed into that corner. We ended up talking about that.
I think there's a solution. Give up the whole program and tell people they gotta bring their trash to the dump again. Save all that money.
That's beyond our jurisdiction.
Adam, can you remind me, how many times have the other 4 items been deferred?
Let's see.
I know the 550 you said was 2 times, but
So we've got the Freightliner tractor, I think first showed up on CIP for 2023. The message trailer in 24, the side loader in 24, and the F550, I think last year was the first year that one made it. And then the Towmaster, I believe last year might have been the first year for that as well.
okay, thank you.
Yep.
That's a good question.
I don't know if Danielle forwarded along, it kind of dawned on me after the meeting with the select board Monday night that you might benefit from the same report I had given them, which kind of lists all of our equipment. I know I gave you the full matrix, I think that made it in, but everything, not just what's on the 5-year outlook, but also historical spends for things like maintenance and rental equipment and that kind of thing. So
That would be useful information. We won't put it in the packet, but to see, explains your replacement schedule, for example, the maintenance expense. We don't see that, but it is a cost that has to be considered. So, yeah, Joanne, if you could get that from Adam. Send
Is
it
that
around.
called the DPW Extended Matrix?
So I've got
From
the
June.
extended matrix has everything in the same format that the regular matrix is on. I emailed Danielle
Was this
a
recently?
report, 2 nights ago.
Oh, no, I haven't received anything.
Okay, so
Thank you.
I can send it to you. too.
Okay, thank you.
That's really it for equipment anyway up front, unless anybody has any other questions. Okay, so moving on to projects, I don't have, it doesn't sound like I have a lot, but it is a lot. So a big one for us, of course, is the road plan. The short version is we have 260 lane miles of road in town-ish, and our job is to maintain that as best we can and not let anything fall into such a state of disrepair that it costs 3 times as much to get it back to good. So keep your good roads good by spending hopefully a little less early on versus just-in-time type replacements or reclamation projects. So what I did for this year, and Monday night, the Board of Selectmen kind of gave us some target percentage increases from the current year's default budget. So right out of the gate, this number is going to be much larger than what the Select Board will see soon. But I wanted to give the Capital Improvement Planning Committee at least this is what it would take to maintain what we have. So this first year number of $2,060,000 is, there's several ways to skin the cat, but there are, this provides a mix of reclamation of our worst roads that need some drainage improvements as well as new pavement, with overlays of roads that are in that 12 to 15, 17-year age, where if we don't do something to them, we're going to lose them into that category of reclamation. So that's about a mix. So it's about 1.5 miles of reclaim total townwide for this total amount. Plus about 17 miles of overlay between main roads and collector roads, and neighborhood streets, which sometimes kind of get the short end of the stick over the years because you try to do the most good for the most people and then get into the neighborhoods afterwards. Coupled with about 10 miles of crack seal. As sort of a lower cost method to hopefully extend, even if you can gain only a few years on several miles of road, that helps the overall road network age. To offset the 260 lane miles in town, all aging 1 year, that's the amount of work that we need. This is the amount of funding that we would need to inject 260 lane miles of life back into the whole network.
Does that include any catch-up spend, or is that just?
This is merely to equal the loss for this first year. So there's no, I think we gain maybe 6 lane miles a year life, but out of 260, it's pretty minimal. So there's no real catch up. It's basically just holding status quo with our overall network quality.
For those of us who are not engineers, tell us reclaim and overlay. What does that mean?
Sure. So
as a history major,
a reclaim project would be. I was going to put it in history terms, but I'm not that good. So a reclaim project would be if we have a road that fails the coffee cup test. If you can't drive down the road with a cup of coffee without it landing on your lap, it's time. It's beyond saving usually. So at that point, a reclaim project uses a large machine, grinds up the pavement, churns the top layers probably, plus some patch, plus cold patch and whatever else might be in there, into the gravel below to create a stabilized base with the gravel and the asphalt, creating a nice stable layer that can hold the traffic weight of cars and trucks on top of the asphalt that's to come. So it chews up this road, we grade it to the shape that we want, and then it gets paved over again. Almost always reclaim projects include significant drainage work. So the reason the road is in such rough shape is either it's super old and whatever drainage it had is well beyond failed. All these old metal pipes, if we're lucky metal, have rusted away and they're starting to fail, or it's super old and never had drainage to begin with. Water's the enemy of asphalt roads. So we install several thousand feet of drainage on most of these jobs, a combination of surface drainage, which comes in from the grates and catch basins that you see from the street level, as well as usually underground perforated pipe, which will wick water away from the roadbed and into the pipes to collect it and move it away from the system and away from the roads. Normally the reclaim projects include quite a bit of drainage as well, and then all the work associated with the new pavement, raising the drainage structures, tying in driveways and frontage, sometimes curb if it's a closed drainage system or a steep slope, and then any other incidentals that need to happen as part of that work. An overlay project is where we have usually where we have not gone so far into that failure mode where we're trying to preserve what we have. We still have a relatively well-shaped crowned road with not too many ruts and potholes. If we do have a lot of potholes, but they're only in isolated areas, we'll come through and we'll mill and fill those out to get a nice flat surface to accept the new asphalt and keep a good bond. And then an overlay usually for us is 1.5 inches of new asphalt riding surface on top to restore any crown that might have been lost over time and help that water shed off. Usually involved with that, we'll come through and we'll try to replace any cross culverts or known failure drainage pipes that are already existing. That can turn an overlay project into something pretty significant. Could take a couple weeks to change out drainage pipes. It could take a day if it's the right stretch of road and there's only 1 or 2 crossings. Normally then, if it's an open drainage system, we'll try to reestablish any ditch lines that have filled in over the years or start to get higher than the road and prevent water from shedding off. And then we'll pave the road, add the new layer of asphalt, add shoulder gravel to support the edges of the asphalt, and I guess restripe if it's a painted road. So it's a pretty quick, process compared to a reclaim project, which could be several weeks to complete. And then there's kind of a third category of Band-Aid shim, we call it. If the road is so far gone, but it's so far down the list of priority for a reclaim project, sometimes we'll just come in and slap a thin layer of asphalt and try to restore the driving surface, the safety, and the plowability until such time that we can afford to do some drainage work or further repairs.
Are there many of these neighborhood streets that you're looking to redo that are also on the sewer list?
There are. So we are, as Corey mentioned, we're slightly behind. We kind of had a couple stumbles budget-wise with getting through the College Road neighborhood. We've tried to work through all the streets there. We are coming up to the flats colloquially, the Rochambeau, Cross, Higgins neighborhood, where sewer has, I think, the majority of the replacement pipe work that they have is left there. So that is our next landing point. We have one more street in the College Hill neighborhood, Desonia Street. So the goal next year is for Desonia Street to be the #1 priority cross street with the little stub of Higgins that's by the elementary school to be our second priority with the sewer department. And that way we can keep them as best we can on track. Obviously, a lot of water is going to go under the proverbial bridge between now and budget season ending, so I may or may not have more or less funds to work with. So that, this list obviously is a little longer than what's going to happen anyway, but I want to make that commitment at least for those two projects regardless, so we can keep them on track. If for some reason either the state, probably unlikely, but if the state offers up some additional highway funds, or if town meeting maybe votes in a special article again. This last year we had one, but it was only a one-year article. If there's additional funding in, then we might be even able to get in further into the Rochambeau area and keep them tracking, because it all needs it, which is the nice thing, I guess, in a way. But tough to watch it year after year and know we're not there yet.
Yeah.
You've got going in the outer years some culvert and bridge
Yes.
replacement. Are those just normal stuff?
So, yes, so the other couple of things that I have in project-wise, we've had this critical culvert replacement rehab program request 2 years now. These are for short-term large culverts that we don't really have time to save up for the project, small contributions, things that are starting to fail, and we are in danger of, possible catastrophic. When a culvert fails, it's usually overnight. You see it coming, but if you're not doing something to mitigate the problem. So we have a few large ones, in particular Center Street and Smith Road have large culverts which are going to require some pretty significant wetland permitting, even for a rehabilitation project. Center Street is large enough that it's considered a bridge in the state category. We had some bridge aid funding, but it dried up. So we're back to where the town's funding this project. But we've got a rehab plan for that. Smith Road additionally being a prime entrance for the Maple Ave School is important that we do it on our terms next summer rather than in the middle of December or whatever, right after school break, and everybody's trying to get to school. And then another large one that we know for sure is Church Street, the water course that goes underneath Church Street, underneath the yoga studio building, underneath Town Hall's parking lot, part of the building. It's kind of crazy. So when Church Street is rebuilt, we don't want to have a culvert fail after that road's redone. So we have to look at that. So that's coming up in the next couple of years.
Davis?
On the topic of Church Street, Derek had come before us on a thing on just the general town stuff that was the redoing of the parking lot, which was possibly time dependent on the DPW's Church Street project. So do
Yes.
you know when that project might land?
So it's probably 100% tied to the culvert piece of Church Street. I think what's likely to happen is the Church Street culvert and therefore Town Hall lot will happen in advance of the actual Church Street reclamation project, because that does need a reclaim, it does need drainage. There are some decisions to be made about sidewalk. It is the preferred connection of the rail trail from the village down to New Boston. So whether or not, instead of sidewalk, you do a wider shared use. So there's some design decisions to be made with Church, and because of that cost, that I think will slow down Church Street itself. So I think to answer your question, I think we're going to get ahead of the culvert piece, because there are a few unknowns with it, which will allow Derek to get the parking lot paved.
Maybe you could tell the folks in the room about the culvert that runs under, how it's built and what it's made of.
So it's a stacked stone box culvert, which right now has at least one water line that goes through the middle of it, which the water precinct is going to be relocating prior to our project, which managed to snag a Christmas tree, I guess, during the flood or one of the floods. But it's not great to have a pipe or a line right through the middle of your culvert. But we're experiencing some, because it's stacked stone, largely unmortared in many places, there are some sinkholes throughout, so the Town Hall parking lot sees some settlement issues as a result. The Gap building, the hardware stores.
How long is this culvert?
It
goes
runs
from-
all the way to the river. Starts right here by the preschool, and it goes underneath the building, underneath the parking lot.
Goes underneath the
Gap.
corner of the building right over there, in the front corner of this building.
When was it built?
Right under my office.
I don't know.
It was built in 3 pieces, to best of the knowledge was. It was a stone box culvert, and then it opened up, and then they put RCP, I believe, as a connector, and then it's stone box culvert under Depot Street all the way out to the hardware store, where they put a new connection on, and they put a new pipe into the river when they redid the hardware store. You can walk through that stone culvert. It's tall enough. When it's dry season, you can walk right from one end to mostly.
We'll do that as a field trip.
You wanna go for a trip sometime?
Just bring your spider
Go
buster.
for a ride.
Okay, so that's our critical culvert program. So that's the bigger culverts that are closer to imminent failure, that we want to avoid, that kind of thing. Then the select board has asked department heads to propose some ideas for maybe new capital reserve funds to try to get in that good mindset. So the couple that I'd like to propose coming forward for this budget, for this town meeting, would be bridge replacement and rehab capital reserve funds with some nominal deposits. We have 18 vehicle bridges and 2 pedestrian bridges in town, each of which really should be receiving some attention on a fairly regular basis. I think we do a pretty good job. We only have 1 red listed bridge in town. It's on Terrell Hill Road, recently red listed. But I think the big bridge project this summer on Henry Bridge Road sort of highlights, these things. That bridge deck is 30 years old, so it's time for the project that we're doing. But it's been in pretty rough shape for a few years. If you drive that bridge a lot, you've dodged potholes, and it's so narrow you're dodging plow trucks and other vehicles too. But can't do anything about that one now. But so we'd like to be able to start putting some money away each year towards some of these bigger projects when they come. So DOT has some good guidance depending on the type of bridge, what you should be doing annually, what you should be doing 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, and basically you're looking for new asphalt on these bridges every 10 years, and new chipping down new deck and waterproofing membrane at least every 20 years. So when you have 20 bridges, if you include the pedestrian bridges, it doesn't give me a whole lot of time to save in between some of these bigger projects. So
These will require separate warrant articles.
yes,
then,
yep.
so.
And then the second one I'd propose would be similar for our DPW facilities. We are getting to the point where the DPW transfer station especially was a little older than the offices, but everything's starting to get to the point where we're needing maintenance. Roofs, certainly the HVAC systems, but our equipment at the transfer station has been rode pretty hard. So we had a scale project a few years ago. We've got compactor projects that are coming out because they're just heavy use items, and now they're going on 30 years themselves. We have 13 buildings plus 5 or 6 of the various compactor scale fuel island type stuff. So same thought process. We gotta start tucking some money away because, I got a quote on the salt shed roof. The geodesic dome that we have is a little bit trickier than a standard roof, but $40,000. I'm gonna get a couple other quotes, but, it kinda highlights in one fell swoop, you can, as we all know, get some big maintenance requirements. So that's it. I've got those, hope to be on the town ballot this year. As far as revenues go, we do have a fairly reliable chunk of change from the state with the state block grant. Just under 500,000 estimated to get up over 500 by the end of this year, this CIP window. And every so often they'll do an additional, in the biennium, they might include some additional funds. Nothing's been signaled right now, but the new session might bring up some proposals, I don't know. And then we do have, about 12,000 in impact fees that are expiring each year, so we try to use those, we do use those for any of the projects that are eligible. We work with finance to make sure we're not losing any money.
Okay, great. Anybody have any questions? It was a quick trip. There were a lot of equipment and stuff.
Not as quick as sewer, or library, sorry. Couldn't do it.
You're good, everybody? Thank you, Adam.
Okay.
Oh, I have a question. You mentioned 2 years ago about the limitation of capacity for solid waste disposal. And that's the upcoming Armageddon. Are you gonna retire before we reach that cliff, or?
I should be so lucky. I have a feeling I will still be well within my working age, unfortunately. So I don't have any great answers. I guess short story is, I think the select board, we just entered a new agreement with Turnkey. This is the first full year of the bringing our trash to Rochester instead of the North Country. I think sometime before this contract expires, we might want to get our foot in the door with the waste to energy plant, because that's a more unknown quantity. And I'd like to
Aren't you partners with the one in Bosquen?
We are not.
Oh, okay.
No. The cost, I looked at before this last contract extension, or this new contract, I should say, with Waste Management, at pricing, and it was just too big a hit to go from our pretty favorable deal with Casella up north. It was already going to be an increase to go to Waste Management in Rochester. There are some savings, but cost per ton was pretty good jump. To go to the waste energy plant would have been even another 15 or 20% higher on top of that change. So we didn't do it this past time, change, but I think that's probably in the short run the best thing we can do to help protect ourselves from the future. But I'm sure everybody's going to be kind of jumping to the same dry land before too long. And there's no, these new landfills take a decade, to plan, permanent build, so I don't know. I'm not sure what's going to come in.
Nobody knows.
Nobody knows.
The governor put a moratorium on them for a year today.
They should.
On what,
And what about the
landfills?
recycling program?
On
Is that
landfills?
still functioning? Did that market collapse?
So it's varied quite a bit. We were, let's see, I think this time last year, I'll probably be wrong, but this time last year, I think we were around $70 a ton. We were down as low as 40, maybe 43, I think, a few months ago. It's started to creep back up last month, and I have a little indicator because our previous company, Casella, still sends me monthly rate letters as if we're bringing them our recycling. They were a little higher anyway, but this last month they had a $20 per ton jump from June to July's rate. So I anticipate we will see some kind of jump as well with Waste Management when we receive their rate letter for the month, but that's a variable monthly contract.
But that's still a savings over the,
It is still a savings. We have about $25-ish a ton buffer between what it costs to landfill versus what we're paying for recycling removal. So we do have a little bit of buffer before it starts to become a question of if you're going to save money by landfilling or not. So try to avoid that if we can.
good, thank you. Anybody else have any questions off subject or otherwise? Trash is interesting, so Almost as good as source.
Everybody has trash.
That's it. Thank you, Adam.
Okay, well, thanks, everybody. Have a good night.
Yeah.
You too, Adam.
Thanks.
Okay, let's move ahead to the, looking at the next meeting. Do we need any callbacks? Yeah. I'm not aware, does the school have to come back for anything, Dan?
No, they reshared their schedule with the adjustments.
Yeah.
I don't think there was a reason for them to come back.
Okay. And were there any other callbacks that anybody wants? I don't recall identifying any.
I don't know if it's necessarily worth a callback to look at changes to the matrix based on what we just heard about the rental program versus just purchasing vehicles. I think if the committee is comfortable with it, I would vote to send the matrix on with the ability for Adam to make those changes between, now and the budget season. But, you could always call him back if you wanted to.
I think our approach could be, you're identifying a need in vehicles that you're gonna buy or acquire. How you do that is a policy decision that's made by the
Fair
select
enough.
board.
Fair enough.
If that's fair, because we, just as I said, we don't typically dictate how they're gonna be financed. We'd like to know what the proposal is, but that's not our jurisdiction. If we leave it at that, we see the need, and it's up to the select board and we're working with Adam to decide how best to, and the budget committee, how best to do that, acquire it. Is that fair? Okay. Yeah.
I'm not sure if it's a big deal, but I'll be honest, the Parks and Rec presentation to me wasn't, he didn't list any priorities, and he just kind of looked to the budget committee to do his job. Like, I feel like coming to the CIP meeting, he needs to prioritize what he wants. And I was, as a sole person here, I was not impressed with it, and I wouldn't mind seeing him come back with CIP related, driven stuff.
Maybe we could impress that for next year. Because this year, he won't have time to get anything ready for a meeting in 2 weeks.
1 week, I think, based on the calendar.
August 6th.
Yeah. I don't know, it was just me.
Yeah, no, well, that's,
It's a good thought.
If I could interject, just because I'm on that commission, Rick operates in a space where if he doesn't think he's gonna get it, he doesn't ask for it. And I think that reflected in this
yeah,
presentation.
it was a less aggressive.
Yeah, I think a general feeling I got from the presentations this year is the department heads feeling pretty hesitant to make asks because of the environment they've kind of been met with through the budget processes through the past couple of years. So I think, I understand what you're saying 100%. I think an assumption I made was that he recognized the fact that his department doesn't save lives. It's not a cooling center. It just ends up lower down on a priority when it's a difficult environment.
Yeah, he was feeling a beat on. My message to them though is, still tell us what you want. We saw that with the fire department. Please let us know, because if you don't tell us, we can't do anything with it.
If you don't prioritize it, that's what I'm saying. Like, if you don't come here, I don't know.
Well, it's nothing new.
But anyway.
It's nothing new. Jim and I have been around a long time on this, and there are departments that just have never asked for much.
Well,
That's just the way it is. And, we tell them that it's your obligation to list needs and give it to the CIP. If you don't get it, you don't get it, but you should tell us what your needs are.
And that's,
Make the pitch.
Right, that's what you're saying.
And I completely disagreed with the school department's approach last year with the giant bond and not asking for anything. And Jim and I both spoke up that you need to put things in real time and not count on a big bond. And then they came back with the same proposal this year. So I just take what I get and I pass it on. It goes to the budget committee and the select board next, right, Jim?
yeah,
Yeah.
and the school board.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
And that's where the decisions are made, not us.
yeah, we're an assembler of information or packaging so they can deal with it and recommendations. But in the end, we don't make the
And we
final.
always recommend, ask for what you need. Put it in there.
So with that cheery thought, we'll see you next week if we can finalize the matrix. So take a look at it if you have a chance, and see if there's anything that you would have either questions on or think is inappropriately either scheduled or, you know, categorized by need. I will say the department chairs, but for Rick maybe, are pretty good at understanding the process. It's a much better presentation than many years ago, so our work is much easier. Used to be we do a lot of drilling down, and I think that we've taught them to do it well, which is a good thing. It makes our job easier, so. Okay, that's.
We don't do the priorities anymore, do we, Jim? I don't see
Well,
one.
they,
Yeah, we got priorities here, two necessary.
yeah.
We adjusted priority, we always discussed the priorities.
We
in the
have,
past.
yeah, and usually that's reflected in this, what year we're doing it, and of course you've got it to a priority.
But I mean, there have been years when the CIP has moved stuff. If we thought that the budget was too heavy for this upcoming cycle, 27, we have the authority to move a project from 27 to 28, or even to 2 years,
Or-
to try to balance the tax load.
Or we've moved things forward to.
We have moved things
to-
forward,
For the same goal,
absolutely.
yeah, so they don't all end up in a big year. 2
But I
years
mean,
now.
Rick has the Glen Lake waterfront rehab prioritized as first on his list above the sports complex.
Okay, so it's.
I think he's also looking at the big numbers too. He has to
Yeah.
take time to get a bond.
Exactly.
And to get public input to support the project.
Yeah.
Okay,
Plus,
well,
the sports complex is dependent on Lions too.
right, yeah, there are other factors out there that we don't control. Olivia, you would make a motion to adjourn?
Sure.
Davis, you second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries, thank you.